Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations, and I thrifted this pot. It definitely looks old and tired, but it's got some cool carvings on it. Some raised relief of flowers and flowers. The other F word, fish. Fish. Fish and ferns. Fish and like seaweed, kelp. Oh my goodness. So I wanted to kind of play with this a little bit. And so we're experimenting. To start, I'm going to take DIY clay-based paint in a cream. So I'm using crinoline. I didn't want a bright white. I wanted something that was, oh, okay, it's coming. Oh, okay, I sealed it crooked. Anyway, I want to get this painted out in the cream. I don't want a bright white. And for this project, I do not want to use a product like Fusion, which has a self-sealer. I want to use an open paint. So don't use an acrylic. You could use a chalk paint or anything like that. I need it to be capable of absorbing some of the color that we're going to add on to it. And something that is already sealed, like an all-in-one paint, is going to repel the next layer. So we don't need that. Sometimes the type of paint is really determined by the effect that you're after, what you're going to do to it next. And so it's good to have a couple of different brands of paint that you like and use. It kind of explains why I have both the DIY clay-based paint and the Fusion paint in the shop, because they're really good for different styles of painting, different types of projects. So I'm gonna get probably 2 coats on this, and then we'll come back for the next part of the project. All right, I have watercolors out. And so the reason that I had wanted to ensure that I had an unsealed paint was because the watercolors would just, well, they wouldn't adhere, right? They would just sit on the surface of a sealed paint. But once we have this unsealed paint, we can, whoa, got a big drip happening there. We can then paint out a lot of our detail. Now, I don't want it as dark as this. So I am going to be softening it after. And that's easier to do than try and control maybe how much of a wash you got on here. But it allows me to not just paint in with an individual color, but I can layer the colors as well. So, you know, this is kind of a vibrant green for this one, which is cool. But I'm going to want to go back in after this part's painted and add a little bit more depth and detail to it. Let me move this guy over here that I'm working from. I've got all 3 of those painted out with that base color. I can now start to mix in some of these other greens into that base color, and I can start adding in a little bit of that additional color to them. So this can be softer with a little bit more water, just letting it kind of leach out into the sides a little bit, because I've already got some of that green paint down. But that's how we're gonna just kind of layer a little bit of that color so we get a little bit of differentiation happening and it doesn't look so flat. Okay, I just happen to have given this an opportunity to dry, definitely overnight, which is perfect. What I want to do now is I want to seal it, and I'm deliberately sealing it with wax. If this is the last piece, this kind of got a fishbowl look to it. If this is the last section and you just want to leave it like this, depending upon what pattern you had going with this. This was a carved raised container. But you can get this, maybe it's got geometric patterns, maybe it's got just rough designs and you're highlighting that. Maybe you just stenciled on your own pattern, depending upon the stencils that you have, and you've got this raised relief pattern. You could just seal it like I'm doing now. You could seal it with poly, you could seal it with the wax, and you could be done. But I wasn't painting it with the intent that all of this paint would show, and that, in my case, that it would look like a fishbowl. I was really looking at wanting to do this so that we get it kind of looking like stone with some of these colors leaching through it, so that it looked more like it had been one of those old relief paintings that you might find in an old cave. And you know, that's where my head goes. So we are deliberately painting it with wax, and I want to coat it with the wax right now so that the wax is wet. I'm not going to be wiping the wax back. I'm leaving that on. And then we're going to mix up a light wash. So I'm starting with the darkest gray, working lighter, and I've got some, oh, I think I'm gonna need to bang this. Sorry. Oh, it's been a while. There we go. All right. So I have some old school. For this, because we're mixing washes, it does not matter if you are making the wash with, this is a clay-based paint, or if you are making the wash with a, like a fusion, which has a built-in sealer, because the sealer is really kind of eliminated from the equation. Once we're adding this much water to it anyway, it's not going to self-seal. And I really just want a really watery see-through finish. Now, here's the thing. You have likely always been told that you cannot paint over wet wax. And because the wet wax is going to resist the paint. Perfect. That's what we're after for this. I'm doing the wash, and I want my wax to resist. I want it to kind of bubble up and not go everywhere, and that's what I'm looking for. So you see how it all separates? Perfect. That's what we're looking for. We don't want a nice, easy finish. We're going to be doing a number of washes on this. They'll stick in different places, but it means that we're actually going to do wet wax. So this is called a wet wax technique. Go figure. But we want the wet wax in between every coat of paint. So you can see how now, like a lot of my painting is getting covered over, and it's starting to dull it down, which is perfect. That's what I'm looking for. And I want that loose, uneven texture, right? You can see that it's all kind of separating. It's just kind of almost beating up and sitting on the surface. I have it everywhere across my table. I probably have it all over my shirt. I can't wear nice things. Let me just take you down and you can see. See that uneven, beaded kind of texture? That's what we're after. That's what we want. And we're now going to let this dry. And then we are going to do this all again with a lighter gray. Now that this first wash has dried, and you can see that it's not nice and smooth, it kind of beaded up. That's what we want. That's what I want anyway. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I am going to take my clear wax. I am going to cover my entire pot again. And I'm going to take a mid-tone gray wash. And I'm going to paint over the surface of this again with that mid-tone. So you can see how already that one gray has started to dull this down. And I want to continue that process. I wasn't looking at, look at the drips, I love that. I wasn't looking for this to look, you know, freshly painted and pristine. It's not the idea. It's not my idea. If it was yours, just wax and stop, right? Or seal with the top coat of your choice. So you have the option along the way, right? You could have just stopped at the first step if that's what you wanted, if that suited you, if that was a look that you liked and that you were after. This is the same brush that I was using for the other color, just sitting in water. And we're just gonna do, again, that wash and see how it immediately starts to just kind of bead up. It's not sitting and covering everything. That's what I'm looking for. So we do this. See, look at the beading. Okay, we do this, we let it sit and dry, and then we go again. And I can repeat any of these colors again. So this mid-tone, I may do, I'll see what it looks like when it's dry. I may do that color another time because it's always gonna sit in different spots. So if I wanted a little bit more coverage of it, and I'm back to my beginning, so I'm not gonna get rid of the wash that I've made because I may want another layer of this. I could go back to the dark layer and do another layer of that instead, if I want. My last layer, or two, is gonna be a lighter gray. And for this, I'm gonna use Fusion because I have it open. And it doesn't matter for this if we're using a paint with a top coat or a paint without a top coat. We're just creating paint washes, so it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm loving how this is going. I mixed up, I just had some of that mid-tone gray. I added some of the dark gray and I just want to do one more coat of the dark. So I'm gonna do that same way, cover it with the wax, and then apply it. And then I'm gonna do the same process and mix up a coat of the light. So just so you don't see me doing exactly the same thing every time. So I'm gonna do the dark, let it dry, cover it in the wax, do the light, and then see where we're at. But already we're getting where I want to be, where this is looking more aged, the colors are more muted, you know, like a really old mural on stone or on a walkway or, you know, on an old wall, that kind of look. That's sort of what we're after. Just feeling where I put the wax. But I just want to tone that down. And so we're gonna do just another coat of the dark over that wet wax and let this one dry. And then I'll do my wax again, and then I'll do a light coat and see where I end up and whether or not I need more. So this is not a difficult process by any means, and you could be doing this. I mean, I'm doing it in the grays because I wanted to age this and make it look a little bit more like an old painted mural kind of idea. But you could be doing your washes and your colors in pinks or purples or greens, or you could be doing them in anything depending upon what you want that finished look to be like, right? But we're taking it back a little bit darker before we do that light, and I think that's gonna work for me. All right, so another coat to go. I am just finishing putting the wax on, just feeling to see if I put it everywhere that I needed to. I've got a light gray. This time it's Pebble by Fusion. It doesn't really matter the type or the brand of paint. Once you start mixing it with water to create a wash, none of them self-seal, right? So go with whatever you got. And again, you can kind of see it all just bubble up on there. And that's what I want with this coat in particular. I want it to do a lot of that beading. So I'm going to be more dabbing and see what I can get to just kind of sit on top like that in the crevices more than anything else. And bear in mind, guys, like as much as I'm doing a ton of coats, you could stop this at any time that you hit a look or a version that really appeals to you based on whatever you've got going on color-wise and, you know, under pattern-wise and that kind of stuff, right? So you can see how it just beads up. That's what I want on this coat for sure. So I used a little bit more wax in order to be able to achieve that. Definitely putting it on when that wax is still wet and on there. And I just want to dab it in place so that it just sits up on top in those beads of paint wash. And then I'm just going back wherever there happens to be major drips. But, okay, now I can do a little bit of the lip, and then I can leave that to dry. But if this dries like it is right now, I'm good to just seal it and be done. I'm loving the look of it beaded up like that. That's what I'm after at this stage. So, okay, leaving it, letting it dry, and then we'll see. So definitely don't want to touch this because I don't want to smear it. I love how it's sitting on there right now. And in particular, I like how faint those watercolors are. That's what we wanted. We wanted that aged, worn kind of look and patina there. So this is going exactly where I wanted. Don't know about you, but this is where I wanted to go. The last step in the process is that I just want to take a wet cloth and I just want to very lightly distress this in some spots. I don't want to do a lot, but you can see that I'm starting to add back just a little bit of that color. So I'm distressing back through all those layers of the paint washes and of that wax. And I just want to do it very subtly. So it means I don't want to outline every little piece of the carving, but I just want to bring back little hints of some of those colors. You can see them very faintly through the pot already, which I love. I'm just looking at very, very judiciously adding just little pieces of them back. And then once I'm done that, I will apply one more coat of wax because right now I just have the paint wash on the surface. So when I've done doing that, I'll add one more coat of the wax, wipe it back, and then this is done. But right here, like that whole shell that I had painted kind of in a bit of those orangey and plums, that's as much of it as I'm bringing back. So very, very limited. But again, just to bring a little bit of that color back, all I'm looking for. Okay, this is our finished pot. And I gotta tell you, I love this finish. It looks like it is stone or concrete. And you know, like how they used to do like those pale colored inserts into poured concrete backyards. I know that our old patio when I was a kid, my dad, even though I live in Canada, my dad was from Texas. And so he had inset pale colored concrete
There was a bighorn cow. Okay, so cattle. I think that's more appropriate. Cattle. So there's a big longhorn cattle head, and I think there was the Star of Texas on there, and they were all in this really pale colored, washed out sort of concrete color. And I think that's really what inspired me to try this look when I found this. You know, when I started out and we just did the watercolor wash, it looked very fishbowly, right? It really emphasized it looked much brighter. Now it just has that kind of that subtle coloring, and I love the look of that watercolor on that open paint. So like on a chalk paint, or I use the DIY clay paint and just absorbing it. There's so much that you can do with that to be able to create these light, subtle looks that, again, you could do by painting with washes of all those colors, but it just seems a lot more onerous to mix those up versus using the watercolor because it's already available. But I love this look. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. It's exactly what I envisioned in my head, and that's really rare. So definitely a plus. Let me know if this is something that you would ever try. Love to hear from you on this one. I'll take some close-up pics, but yeah, I'm digging this. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one, as always. And until then, take care.